Hey, so I'm going to be talking about how data is saved and stored in Minecraft, and as well as how I'm going to do it in my project for next month called Mineclone. So the basic unit of measurement in, well, I guess I should go like full screen probably, huh? Oh, nice. uh, there. Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. So the basic unit of measurement in Minecraft is a block, right? And a block is 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter, 1 meter cubed. Uh, this is actually out of order. A chunk is a section of 16 by 256 by 16 blocks, right? So if you divide that up into 16, you get 16 even sections vertically of a chunk, right? So I don't know why, but y is the vertical direction. That's why I said 16 by 256 by 16. So if you divide up a chunk into 16 even sections, you get one section, which is 16 by 16 by 16, right? So that means a chunk is 16 by 256 by 16 blocks. And then a region is the largest structure in Minecraft besides the world itself, and it is 32 by 32 chunks, or 512 by 512 blocks cubed, right? So it's a lot of blocks, like 32 million blocks. Now, storing a block. If you want to store a block with no other information other than what type of block it is, not what it does, what's standing on it, which way it's facing, none of that stuff. First of all, there's over 150 different blocks in the game, which is a lot, but it is still small enough to be stored in a single byte, because a single byte goes up to 255. And that means, since you can store it in a single byte, you could store 4 blocks per 32-bit integer. You can pack them all into one integer. So we said a group of a chunk. This is what a chunk looks like. Is a group of 16 by 256 by 16 blocks, or 65,536 blocks, which means that you would need an integer array of 16,384 integers, right? That's what this number is divided by 4, right? So it's blocks divided by 4 bytes gives you the size in integers. But we know that chunks are mostly air. Most of the chunk is air. I'm going to say 3/4 of the chunk is air. That's a fair assessment because I know from playing the game that down here at the very bottom is Y0, and if you go up to the surface is anywhere between 60 to maybe 80. Y60 to Y80. Now, the world goes all the way up to 256. That is the max build height. And the world never generates higher than 128. But you can build higher than that, right? So that means that around only 1/4 of the chunk is actually useful information. The rest is air that we don't care about. That means that you can squish this size all the way down to 4096, which is only about 16 kilobytes. And that's pretty dang good. But remember, we're only storing the ID of the block. That's it. Just what type of block it is. A single byte per block. That's it. Now, if we're storing regions, that is, we said 16 by 16, or 32 by 32 chunks, right? It looks like this. If you were to map it out in game, this is actually only 1/4 of the size. If you had 4 of these in a, in like a big square, that would be a region. So this is the kind of area we're talking about. If you work out how many blocks that is, it's over 67 million blocks. It's actually this number right here. 67,108,864 blocks. That is a lot of blocks. If you were to store all of that, that's 67 million bytes of information, right? 67 megabytes. That's ridiculous. That is huge for a save file for a video game, Comparatively speaking to other games that don't automatically generate their world, right? Because the world of Minecraft is auto-generated, it has to be saved. Because you can't assume that it's going to be the same every time. Now that means you have 1,024 chunks, and if you multiply it out, that gives you 16 megabytes per region. Because remember, we're not storing air. There is nothing there that's not useful. We don't care. We can just insert it at runtime. It's the most common block, right? So 16 megabytes per region. Let's take a look at my actual regions on my hard drive. That's actually this recording. That's funny. If I go to percent app data percent, this is where Minecraft stores its data in the .minecraft folder. And I go to saves. Clarmf is the world that I created. And if I go into region, there's obviously a ton more stuff here, but if I go into region, these are only about 6 megabytes. 5 megabytes. 3.78 megabytes. This is actually the spawning region where you start the world, where you spawn into. 3.78 megabytes. How did they get it that small? Well, number one, it's compressed. It's compressed. Of course it's compressed because these are ridiculous file sizes. These are huge. If I look at the entire folder for my world, 111 megabytes. I haven't even played this that much. It's 111 megabytes. I've played maybe a few hours in this world. 111 megabytes. Look, the last time I played it was over 2 weeks ago. Almost 2 weeks ago, actually. Anyway, so if I open up this program here, this allows me to open the allows me to interface with these containers. So if I go into region over here, now I can look into these. So if I open so let's say this chunk. This is coordinates in chunks or in regions. And then here's the chunks within that region, and it also gives you a chunk coordinate in real world, in the actual world. So if I look at this, I go into the chunk. It has it says level, 14 entries. This is all the information for the chunk, the position of the chunk in the world. That's where this comes from, right? Carving masks. This actually is like this tells you information like if somebody decides to dig into the ground, right? Or if somebody digs underwater, this maps out that. Structures. This is tells you about like spawnable structures in the world. So like you can, if you're in a desert, there's a chance that a desert pyramid can spawn and generate there. Or if you're like in the ice plains, you can spawn like an igloo. Same thing with a jungle pyramid. That kind of stuff. There's nothing in these chunks because I know it's not a jungle. I know it's not an ice plains. It's not a desert. It's just a plain plains biome. Now, what I care about is this. Apparently, there is 0 sections in this chunk. That's kind of weird. Let me pick a different chunk. Let's try this chunk. Also 0. Alright, well, let's pick a different region. Okay, so here is a chunk that actually has sections in it. I don't know why those other ones didn't, but this one does. So, these sections, these are actually the sections of our chunk, right? So, we said a chunk is grouped into 16 sections, right? I'm sorry, there you go, 16 sections. So if you count 16 blocks in this vertically, 16 by 16 by 16, you can like kind of see the cubes, right, that come out of this. You'd have one probably like right here, one right here, 3, 4, all the way up to 16 high. So that's how you know this is about a quarter. That's how I got this figure. Anyway, so here we are. This is the actual sections. The first one is always y-1. That's underneath the bedrock, underneath the map. You can never get to that, so there's never anything there, as far as I've seen. You can see it's just stored as a regular byte. If I look up here, byte tag, it's just a byte, -1. If I double click on it, it's actually 255 for some reason. I don't know why it says -1. Anyway, if I go to here, this is y0. Most of this is going to be stone and like minerals and things, right? And if I look at it in hex view, these are the actual block datas. This tells you exactly what blocks are where. I think BB is bedrock. I'm not sure. But these are like hexadecimal values. I know the decimal value for each block. And here's the actual like long integers converted. It's just how this program interprets them. Now, each section has a palette of what is in that section, right? And then specific properties of whatever, so we have air, bedrock, stone, granite, iron ore, diorite, coal ore. So there's all of these blocks are contained within this section. That's what's in here. All of this is just index data to select one of these. That's how it's stored. It's kind of like a relational database, right? So like this block states array of long integers gives you an index into this palette array, quotations, whatever it's actually stored as. And then you pick your thing from there, right? That's how it knows what block to generate. And that's because of the way it's structured and compressed. So I'm sure Minecraft probably just spits out a bunch of data, and then there's a separate program that sorts through all of it and then compresses it. That's how this happens, I believe. I'm not 100% on that, but that's what I'm going to try to do, right? Now, if I look in here, level.dat, and I go to data, this is all of the world data, right? So, like what time of day it is, how long since I last played, the actual seed that the map is generated from. And it also has my player inventory in it. I don't know why there's a brain folder. That's kind of weird. If I go to inventory, I can see what I'm actually holding. So I have one pickaxe in this slot, which is slot 0, diamond pickaxe. It saves its damage, how much damage it's taken. I've broken 1160 blocks with this pickaxe. So it's going to break soon. But that's okay. And if I look, I got some wheat, I got some water buckets, I got some sticks. I got a lot of sticks, 56 sticks, wow. I got a shield that's not equipped for some reason. And then over here, see this 101? Starts at 100. I have iron boots, leggings, all the stuff I have equipped. So it skips over all the regular inventory slots and then, designate, everything after 100 to be like inventory slots. And so you can see, the point of all this is you can see just the sheer amount of data that needs to be stored, right? So you have to store player position, all of this, how much air I have, that's if I'm suffocating or not. So if I'm underwater, this would go down. I'm not sure what can update is. I don't know what data version is. What dimension I'm in. There's 3 different dimensions. There's the overworld, which is 0. There's the nether, which is 1. And then there's the end, which is 2. 3 entire dimensions, all that have to have their own save file just like this, with their own chunk data, with their own regions, with their own overarching general stats, all the mobs that are saved in there, everything, all that has to get saved. It's so much data. It's huge. So what you end up with after all that is there's a world called 2b2t out there, a server that you can connect to. Any player can connect to it if they want to. It's 2b2t.org. That's the IP. But the server has been up and running for 9 years and 3 months. The world has never been reset. It says it right here. Goal to never reset the world in a free-for-all, no-rules PvP environment with little modifications to the vanilla game world. 7,468 gigabytes large. Almost 500,000 players have been in the world at least once. Look, this guy. He's giving out coordinates that are hundreds of thousands of blocks away from the spawn. Almost 500,000 blocks away from the spawn. And that's nothing. That's close to spawn, believe it or not. That's close. It's just an insane amount of data. 7.5 terabytes. 7.5 terabytes of information for a freaking saved game. It's insane. Just so much data. And Minecraft is way more like, the saving algorithm that they come up with in compression for their saves is way more advanced than anything I'll ever create, probably. For my next class or whatever. But the sheer size is just astronomical. So yeah, I just want to share that with you real quick. Thanks for watching.